Revolutionary greetings, comrades, to all comrades across the continent, the black comrades wherever you are, from the Caribbean to the continent, and those comrades in diaspora. I do hereby salute you and start by sending my revolutionary greetings to you, wherever you are. Today, I want to talk about the African Liberation Day. As per the May this month on 25th, we'll be commemorating African Liberation Day. Many things have to stand on mind. Do the days still make sense to us? Some people want to change it from African Liberation Day to Africa Day. What have we learned all along? Since the first date of African Liberation Day was commemorated in 1963, 25th May, in Addis Ababa, in the first meeting that gave birth to African Organization of African Union. As we speak today, it's almost 60 years since that first day. So what lesson do we draw from this? What are the challenges we have come across? And what was the initial vision for African Liberation Day? And what do we have to do together in order to actualize and realize the visions of our great founding father, the Pan-Africans, who sat down in 1958 in Accra, 14th April, to decide about the first journey towards the liberation and the emancipation of the continent. But allow me to take you back a bit. From early centuries, in the first centuries and those other centuries, Africa was invaded. Africa has been invaded by the first people were the Arabs. Arabs invaded the Egypt and the north part of Africa, where they came in as traders, but later on actually gave birth to Egyptians, the black, between we call them the mulattoes, the blacks that were born. They were not purely black, neither were they purely Arab, but they were born between the crossbreed of marriages of the blacks who were in Egypt, Ethiopia, Abyssinia, and those Arabs who came over. Over a period of time, the population of this mixed breed became huge enough that they took over the Northern Africa, and that's why we got the Arabs in Northern Africa. But they sent away the blacks. They were appearing as a second-class race, and Africa were the low-class race. The Romans invaded Africa, the Persians invaded Africa, and the Arabs invaded Africa. Even long before the Britain came over to invade Africa, the likes of Alexander the Great invaded Africa. African civilization was destroyed. Before these people came, we had a proper working system. We had a judicial system that was led by the Council of Elders. We had the kings, we had everything working. We had the education system, the age set system, and people were trained and educationally, they were educated in African values. We had democracy that was working to us by then on how we were electing and appointing our chiefs and our council of elders. We had the greatest building ever. If you check in Timbuktu, the first university and the oldest university in the whole earth was in Africa. It offered education to so many people across the continent and abroad. The Romans and the Greeks got their education in Ethiopia. The Orthodox Church of Ethiopia was one of the oldest churches in the world ever seen. But what happened? Africa was captured, attacked, Africans were killed, Islam and Christianity were forced on African at a gunpoint. No wonder today Africans are defending these religions at a gunpoint, or with a gun, a religion that was foreign, that was brought to Africans at a gunpoint. Our languages was destroyed. Our name were changed. Africans are now called Abraham, Hussein, James, John. They took away even our name. They took away our language. They took away our religion, our spirituality. They took away our civilization. Africa was captured. And this now takes me to the beginning of this conversation and this discussion today as I present this great topic on African Liberation Day. After so many years of African suffering, some great, of course, blacks, Negroes, thought about the Pan-African journey to liberate Africa and to make Africa great again. This journey and this process was picked up strongly by Marcus Mosiah Garvey. who in the early 1900s and 1901 decided to convene the first Pan-African movement and first Pan-African Congress in the United States of America. And so many Pan-African movements followed in between 1909 and 1919. And the last Pan-African movement was actually conference was done in Manchester 1945, where Kwame Nkrumah attended. And after that, Nkrumah came back to Africa in around early 1940s to concentrate in the Gold Coast Party. And it's in this Gold Coast Party that Kwame Nkrumah went ahead to form CPP. And from CPP, Kwame Nkrumah decided to organize the first African and Pan-African conference in Africa. This marks the African Liberation Day. That was in 1958, 15th April. A meeting was convened in Ghana, attended by many African states by then. Just few of them were liberated. South Africa was not invited because there was still apartheid. Despite of South Africa gaining its independence in early 1900, the leadership of South Africa was still in the whites, not in the blacks. And this is where I want to first of all concentrate. On that meeting of 1958, April 15th, there was a proposal to have African Freedom Day. But let's go a bit and check what was the importance and significance of this meeting. One, I'll be talking about it was the first Pan-African meeting ever to be organized in the soil of Africa. And second, it was significant that is because it represented the collective disagreement and disgust of Africans towards colonialism. Further, it represented a total unification towards doing away permanently with colonialism in Africa. The conference, of course, showcased the achievement of so many liberation movements and Pan-African movements. In addition, it symbolized the aspect of Africans to free themselves from foreign dominations. It gave a clear role on what Africans wanted to do moving forward. This conference, of course, gave birth to what I have said is African Freedom Day. But there were subsequent conferences that follow, including the Casablanca Conference, the Monrovia Conference, and now we go directly to the last conference in 1963, 25th May, that was organized in Addis Ababa and attended by around 32 states that had gained independence then. It is in this conference that there was an idea and a thinking that we move it from African Freedom Day to Africa Liberation Day. Freedom was a push for freedom to Africans by getting independence. But since so many movements and so many countries in Africa had already had their independence, there was still a need that liberation had not been attained. And therefore, there was a need for African Liberation Day. So that moving forward, from 1963, with Organization of African Union, we will be pushing for the liberation of the continent. This day has been commemorated for so long and across the globe for 60 years now. But what are some of the achievements? It has raised the awareness and the struggle of political African states worldwide. It has further provided a tool and a platform where Pan-African can mobilize and come together towards the liberation of Africa. For example, the support towards South Africa in 1994 that gave the blacks, of course, the first rulership or leadership of the blacks in South Africa. African Liberation Day has also exposed to us clearly the forces that are anti-African progress. You know, the socialists and the East supported African liberation and independence. And as even we talk now, the struggle still between the West and the East in control of Africa. The West are coming in to support, to control Africa. The East are coming in a way of trying to liberate Africa. So we must be very keen now as we move forward that our liberation must look for alliances. Who do we support and who do we believe? The West have tricked us for so long. They have controlled us, that they colonize us. The East are coming in for support. Do we have to believe them and trust them? This is a question to all of us. But I believe we need to take chances and ensure that we push forward and join forces with those who are supporting our movement. They say, an enemy of your enemy is your friend. The West is a clear enemy to Africa. And therefore, if the East is also enemy of the West, then the East will become our friend on the basis of our liberation, but not to dominate us moving forward. This is my key question and key concern, that we Africans must not be blinded to be supporting and working with the East, China and Russia. And we be blinded the way we were blinded then when the Arabs and the West came in, so that over a period of time they will also be our new slave masters to control us. we should be very clear on how we engage with the East in order for the liberation of Africa. The African Liberation Day is still committed to so many things that were pertinent at the beginning, which is the struggle for national independence of Africa, African redemption, African liberation, and Africa unification, and lastly, scientific socialism. This is what was pushed by Nkrumah. The journey down the revolutionary path can only be accomplished by joining forces and by revolutionary organization working together in order to hasten and actually fasten the process of liberation of the continent. I've been challenging that we are not in the face of any more awareness. Awareness has been done. We're in the face of synergy, working together, coming together to liberate the continent. So it's not time to create more Pan-African movement, more Pan-African parties. It's time to mobilize, unify them, and have a strategy moving forward. The sooner we come together, we synergize, the faster we will realize the liberation of the continent and the total unification and the total emancipation and the total development of the continent. The further we take this time still disagreeing on ideologies and everything else, will take longer before we liberate the continent. Therefore, my last parting shot is very clear. As before, there was African Liberation Support Committee that was organized in the US to support the liberation of Africa. When Ethiopia was attacked under Haile Selassie, African and Caribbean were ready to come in front and come forth to fight for Africa. This Solidarity Fund will help us to mobilize resources across the continent so that there is a pool of resources whereby the Pan-Africans are supporting the resources to liberate the continent. If we still control you, if the West still pump their resources here, they'll control us. Pan-Africans need to mobilize their resources in one point. Another thing, we need to organize the next leaders for Pan-African liberation, the Pan-African next generation leaders. And the last thing, we need to set up committees that will come with common manifesto for African education, health, and everything else. The sooner we do this, the faster we liberate the continent. Long live Mother Africa, long live comrades, and long live Uhuru comrades. Hotep.